Okay, good evening everyone. Welcome to Stage 3 update for the Covid-19 Safety Coordinators. For those of you who haven't met me, my name's Steve Turnbull. I'm the Regional Director for Caledonia Midlands, and I'm just going to set us off for this evening. So for tonight's webinar, first of all, it's great to see so many people tune in once again to this webinar, which is great to see. So as always with our webinars, we are recording this and we'll upload it again in the next day or two to our link on YouTube, which will be on the Scottish Rugby website. We're also, again, as we have been doing with our webinars, if you've attended them before, you'll know about the Q&A function. So you can type in questions as we go through. It's slightly different for this webinar. We're going to do some live Q&As as we go. So after the first section, after Neil's first section on Return to Rugby, we'll maybe just open up for any Q&As. So if you do have a question at that point when we prompt, there'll be a little icon at the bottom of your screen where you can raise your hand. Once you raise your hand, one of us will unmute you, and then you can ask your question. So please do feel free to do that as we progress. And then again at the end, we'll open up for some questions if we have them. So webinar for tonight, we're going to start with Neil Graham, Head of Training Education, and Neil's just going to give a bit of an update on Return to Rugby, particularly focusing on Phase 3. We'll then hand over to Jen Griffin, who's Regional Director for Glasgow South, and Jen's going to give an update on facility reopening and our guidance around that. And then the last sort of third section, we'll just do a wee bit of sharing of good practice. So there'll be a few updates from myself, but we'll also have Hamish Skeen from Lismore Rugby Club. Hamish is the safety coordinator for Lismore, and Lismore did their first session today. So Hamish is going to come on and give a 5-10 minute update on his experiences and the club's experience with setting up today's first session. And then, as I said, we'll have a bit of a Q&A at the end. So the webinar will not take longer than an hour, and then we'll be done and dusted. So without further ado, I'm just going to stop sharing my screen and hand over to Neil.
Thanks, Steve. Hi, everyone. Just going to put my slides up now. Hopefully they have come up. Is that okay, Steve?
Yep.
Brilliant. Okay, everyone. Yeah, great to have so many people on here again. And a lot of you will have heard an update from us on Friday around about Stage 3 Return to Rugby. I'm not going to go through the same information again. You'll be pleased to know. I'm just going to touch on a couple of clarify a couple of points. The webinar from Friday, which was the main announcement, is online, and we can certainly circulate that information afterwards. But I'm just going to, clarify a few points around about our Stage 3, in particular around about obviously what's specific for the mini and youth game and then the adult game as well. After this section, we will have a Q&A. So if you have any burning questions, you can either put them in the Q&A box or wait till the end, and we can take some live questions, which will be great. So just as a summary again, what's new? So we've moved into a situation where larger training groups are allowed, and I'll clarify what that actually means in a moment. A ball can now be passed, which is a great obviously step forward. It allows in our mini and youth game for some touch rugby to be played. There's a specific sanctioned version of touch rugby which we had confirmed from the government, and then in the adult game you can obviously have skill activities where they can pass the ball between each other. And as I said, mini and youth, 8 players aged 17 and under can now play a sanctioned game of touch rugby, which I'll go into a bit more detail with in a moment. What still isn't allowed? No full contact rugby at all at any level. So no tackle, scrum, etc. No competitive matches and no indoor activity. So for mini and youth rugby, obviously the infographics are all available online and on social media. This is probably the main one for mini and youth rugby. So for players aged 17 and under. Couple of key points here is that because of the move to Stage 3, we can now have more players, maximum 10 per quarter of a pitch or 15 per half a pitch, and that's from unlimited households. So in essence, in real terms, that means you can have 10 players per quarter pitch and 15. In the adult game, you'll see in a moment that there are restrictions on households, and that's five households maximum per pitch, which I'll come on to in a moment. So that's the key difference there. Young people are great. They can play a game of touch rugby, which is one-handed touch, turn after 2 steps or 2 seconds to offload the ball, and anything beneath that. So skill activities, breakout activities are all permitted. Just a couple of clarification points. Jason Leach yesterday in an announcement talked around about full contact sport. Now, a couple of people have got in contact to say that, does that mean actually contact rugby can now start? I just want to clarify that's not the case. In the government terms, full contact sport is really just a physical touching of another person. So in our case, it's touch rugby, and this has been approved by the government. So we've had direct correspondence with them over the last 2 weeks to get this all clarified and confirmed. So just wanted to clarify that point for everyone. We've had a few comments on about why 18-year-olds can't play, as you may have people in under 18 bracket, not within a youth setup. That's because it's government guidelines, and you have to be 17 or under to play in an unlimited household environment. So if players are 18, they are therefore classed as an adult in this situation, and would still need to, can still take part in adult activity, but would be classed as one household within a maximum of 5. Mouth guards can be worn, just like in normal activity. It's obviously touch, so probably not as necessary. However, we're not going to prevent people from wearing mouth guards. We just ensure that strong hand hygiene is always in place. Adults always need to physically distance. So if we have a mini rugby coach, for example, they need to be physically distanced away from other coaches, minimum of 2 meters at all times. And I'll come on to in a moment, but if they're coaching adult game as well, they can't coach more than 4 households in any given day. And lastly, just as a reminder, no PVG, no youth coaching, really, really crucial for us. Karen Burnett, our lead child protection officer, is back in from furlough. So we've been catching up with her over the last couple of days. And we know that some PVG requests are coming in at the moment to process new coaches, so that is ongoing. And from a safety coordinator perspective, we just encourage you to link in with your child protection officer as much as possible during this initial stage. So from the adult game, as I said, maximum 5 of households per quarter or half a pitch. So as you'll see, the maximum numbers are the same. 10 players per quarter pitch or 15 per half a pitch. But ultimately in the real world, if you have people from, players living in a household by themselves and coming to training, it may mean that you only have 5 people per quarter pitch or half a pitch, because it can only be from 5 households. So that's the key difference there. If a coach is coaching an adult game, a coach counts as 1 household. Okay, so if I'm coaching, I can only coach 4 other people if they're from single households. Okay, so I count as 1 household. And as per Sport Scotland guidance, in the adult game, can only coach a maximum of 4 households per day. Apologies, home phone's ringing. No contact rugby activities, including touch, and that's again linked in with Scottish Government guidelines. And training bubbles to be allocated where possible. So training bubble would be on a quarter of a pitch. Let's say you have 7 players, maximum 5 households. That training bubble should be maintained for the duration of stage 3, where possible, and that's to avoid any unnecessary crossing over between players and different households, and ultimately reducing the risks of transmission. So some management of activity, check-in out process at all levels, and Steve will come on to some updates we have on maybe some options for you as clubs later. Talked about training bubbles, and that should be done prior to arrival. So try and allocate people their pitch or their zone prior to arrival, so there's no people hanging around in groups at the club. We really try and promote a staggered start and finish times to avoid congestion, especially in car parks, etc. So if you have multiple pitches on the go, try and stagger your start and finish times to allow people to be able to flow in and out of the club without any unnecessary contact. Multiple pitches can be used. We've got quite a few questions about that. So yeah, if you've got 2 pitches, you can utilize those, but again, just include that in your risk assessment in terms of ball hygiene stations, etc., and how you're going to reduce any risks of adults, particularly, becoming in contact with each other. Okay, just one more update really before a couple of final things. We have an e-learning course which will be announced hopefully this week. I've put early next week just to caveat that slightly, but certainly by the middle of next week we'll have this launched. Great small course. It doesn't take very long to complete, 30 minutes max. It does generate a certificate, so coordinators or team leads can actually see that certificate, from players and fellow coaches. It'll be available to everyone, so it'll be available on the website. It won't be available through Hive, as it's accessible to everyone. So parents, players, everyone can actually complete the course. It gives a really good introduction to what to expect when you're arriving at a club. So even spectators could complete the course in the future, and we'll update that course as we go. So when we move into stage 4, we'll update the course with content on that. It'll be mandatory for all coaches and match officials, recommended for all players, parents and volunteers. Players, obviously there's a certain age limit with that, so we'll clarify that situation once we launch it. So these are some of the downloads that I went through last week. We've got 2 infographics. We have activity guidance documents around about the adult game and the youth game. Again, all available to download. Player guidance. The player guidance is really specific on what to do before training, on arrival, during training and after training. So a really nice document to use to send out to all players if you are thinking about starting activity at your club. And lastly, we have some safeguarding and wellbeing documents, and this has been developed in conjunction with Safeguarding Sport, and this gives some guidance for everyone in the game, whether you're a coach, a child protection officer, or anyone in the game. It's just a good opportunity to share well-being and safeguarding considerations amongst the club. Okay, so that's all from me. I'm happy to go over some of these slides if anyone has any questions, but I'll stop sharing at the moment. And if anyone has any questions immediately would like to come on the call, we can activate your mic. All you need to do is raise your hand. I think we've got maybe a few already. So I think we've got Ewan. Ewan's raised his hand. So I'm going to, Ewan, Robbie, Ewan, I've just activated your mic, Ewan. So hopefully you'll be able to hear me now. Ewan, are you there?
Hi, folks.
Hi, Ewan. How are you doing? Yeah, how are you? Well?
Thanks. Yeah, good. Just on the skill activities part on mini rugby.
Yeah.
So there's a sanctioned game of touch that the SRU's put there.
Yeah.
Is it still okay for mini rugby coaches to play like passing skill games? Put the ball down, pick it up, sort of thing, or go to corners, just as an example. Is it still okay to do that?
Yeah, we haven't published any specific guidance there, on exactly what those activities could look like, because in essence, as long as we are being as evasive as possible in those activities to avoid face-to-face contact, so it's and face-to-face transmission, we should be fine. Ball handling is fine. Multiple balls is fine. Multi-direction activities are fine. When it comes to actually a game of touch, so one team versus another, that's the kind of sanctioned game that we got signed off by the government. and certainly they were very, very keen that we where possible, stick to that for the time being. But yeah, underneath that, happy that we have some flexibility within some activities to keep the kids interested, as I know they'll not cope with playing the same game for an hour. So that's fine.
For sure. Thank you.
Thanks, Ewan. Okay, folks, I think we've got Stuart Oliver, I think. Stuart, Stuart, if you're there, I'm just going to activate your mic. Stuart, I think that's you on. Don't know if your mic's going to come on or not. Give him a minute. If not, we'll go to someone else. Okay, Stuart, time's up. We'll go to Dave Mallinson. Dave, I'll just put your mic on. Hi, Dave.
Can you hear me now?
Hi, Dave. Yeah, hi there.
Hi, everybody. Just a question about the pitches. At the moment, the regulations state that on a quarter pitch, I'm talking about the under-17s, on a quarter pitch, you can have 10 players. On a half pitch, you can have 15. However, if you split a half pitch into two, you can have 20. So
yes.
What's the logic in having 10 and 15? Why not 20 on a full half-size pitch?
It's really due to the game you would be playing on a half-size pitch and the speed in which you'd be playing that game. So let's say half a pitch, 7v7, for example, with maybe a sub. You'll be getting up to much greater speeds, and therefore the risk of contact is greater. So what we're trying to do is limit the amount of contact. So instead of having 20 people on a half-size pitch, we went with 15, and in line with Scottish government guidelines, just to avoid unnecessary risks of full contact and collisions. So that's the rationale behind that, David. We understand that, hopefully moving through the next few weeks, we'll be able to maybe relax that somewhat. But that's the guidelines at the moment. So hope that clarifies things a little bit for people.
Yeah, thanks for the clarification.
Thanks, Dave. Thank you. Okay, folks, I think that's we've got one more. We'll go with one more. We've got Jenny. Jenny, I'm just going to activate your mic, Jenny. Hopefully that's working okay. Jenny, hi, Jenny.
Hi, we were wondering in terms of checking in and out, if the parents are accompanying the children for the training, do we need to record them as well?
It's a very, very, very good question. Guidelines at the moment is it's only the people taking part in the physical activity.
Right, okay.
So I think naturally in the kids game especially, if there was any contact tracing, undertaken, the parents are therefore quite easily contactable as a result of that, because you've got the kids' details. If it can be taken, there's no harm in doing it, but it's certainly not a requirement.
Right. Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Jenny. Okay, everyone. Thanks for that. I think we'll just move on. So thank you for that. Again, we can take any more questions near the end, but hopefully that's clarified a few things. So I'll pass back over to Steve.
Okay, thanks, Neil. Thanks for that. And I'm just going to hand it straight over to Jen.
That would have been easier if I had just done that, wouldn't it?
Evening, everyone, and thanks again for your time tonight. So I'm not going to take up too much of the time. I'm just going to go over where we are in terms of facilities reopening. So as you can see in stage 3, we've already had stage 2 where we had pitches reopening, and then we had outdoor catering and hospitality. We're now at stage 3 where indoor hospitality is also available to open, and that is down to choice. And what I would say is, as we go through all of this, each club is at their own stage, so don't feel under pressure to move at the pace of the stages. You do whatever suits you and what's right for your club. So we have outdoor catering, indoor catering, and the use of pitches. Indoor toilets are allowed to be open. and that would be with increased frequency and intensity of cleaning. Again, before you open any part of the facility, you need to ensure you've got your COVID safety coordinator in place, which you're all on here, therefore you have in place at your club. Your check-in, check-out process to aid contact tracing. Indoor changing rooms are still to remain closed, but I'll come on a wee bit more later on to discuss a wee bit more on that. We do have some additional guidance here for opening indoor space for catering and hospitality, really similar to additional guidance that we provided for outdoor, much just a checklist and food for thought and advice and recommendations for you to consider, and we appreciate all clubs will be different. A few of you asked when we did the training the first time around, would we have posters available? And now, yes, we do, and you can see them on the screen just now. So we're going to start building these up as the weeks go on and change them as and when required. But for now, these posters are available on the website for you to download and print off and use in your club as you see fit. So as you can see, we've got recommendations and reminders for sanitising hands, reminders about maintaining physical distance at all times, and that's during activity and when they break, and practicing good hygiene, so talking about avoiding spitting, touching nose, mouth, making sure you cover your mouth when you cough or sneeze. And again, to wash hands frequently for a minimum of 20 seconds. And then the final one is just a reminder for everyone who comes into the club or comes into the space of the club about the 7 steps to reduce the risk of the spread of COVID-19. So just to summarise where we are in terms of facility, what can we open? Pitches, outdoor and indoor hospitality, and that's indoors as of tomorrow. Risk assessments are essential. Again, if you've been on the training before, you'll appreciate that this is not the COVID safety coordinator's role to do the risk assessment, but it is to ensure that it is done, and you'll be asked to co-sign it along with a member of the committee to make sure that enough people are involved in the process. These risk assessments are the risk assessments you'll do on top of your normal health and safety ones for the use of indoor hospitality or activity on the pitches. So it's an add-on, and this is really about minimising the transmission of COVID-19. As we said previously, changing rooms do remain closed. However, if your toilets in your club, firstly, are the only toilets and they're situated within the changing rooms can be opened. They will need to be managed to ensure there is no gathering, and there should be no equipment stored within that. But yes, you can absolutely do that. If you have changing rooms which is easily that have toilets in them that's easily accessed from the pitch, and there's a need, preference or desire to use that for pitch activity and keep the indoor toilets for any indoor or outdoor hospitality that's going on, again, that is absolutely fine, as long as there is a mechanism to prevent any gatherings, that they're monitored, there's high intensity and frequency of cleaning, and that it's marked out really clearly that this is for pitch use and this is for any hospitality use to avoid confusion. Again, it will need risk assessed, but as a club, it's up to you to decide if it does have benefits. It can reduce queues and therefore people in corridors. It can reduce wait times. It can also split cleaning rotas. So there are pros and cons to it. We're just letting you know because it is an option and it's something we have been asked. So changing rooms can be open for the purposes of the toilet, but it needs to be maintained, managed, risk assessed, and absolutely no equipment stored there, and should be no gatherings of people, and it would need to be monitored to ensure that that happens. When we talk about our indoor facility, it is around a high frequency and intensity of cleaning should be maintained throughout. And as I said before, all clubs are at different stages, so I appreciate this is information overload potentially. If you're at the stage where you're just wanting to open pitches, that's absolutely fine. All the resources that we have provided throughout the stages will remain on the website. They are there. So when your club is ready to use them, you can then access them then. So don't feel under any pressure that they're going to disappear. They're there. One thing we would really encourage you to do is engage with your local partners. So some clubs will and do work out of local authority or leisure trust premises, or even school premises. I would encourage you to engage with those partners as soon as possible. Bearing in mind with local authority trusts, some staff will be redeployed, so you might not get a response immediately, and you might not get the response you want immediately. But I would really recommend that clubs be proactive in contacting local authorities and leisure trusts and other partners about gaining access to sites. Not to the point of badgering, but just to be actively encouraging with it, and potentially proactive in terms of a timetable or requesting exactly what the club would really like, especially as we move towards winter. Things might get a wee bit more challenging, so it's better to be on the front foot with it. And then advice and guidance is all we're producing here. This is for you to take and disseminate into your club and apply in your club how you see fit. We can only advise and guide you on that. All facilities and clubs will be different, and everyone will move at different stages. So not everything we say will be applicable, and we haven't covered everything that will be applicable to every facility. So just bear that in mind. And finally, it was something that the First Minister repeatedly mentioned last week when she announced that indoor hospitality would be open. And it's just to remind everyone that the chance of transmission of the virus is significantly higher in indoor spaces, and it's essential that Scottish Government guidance is followed with that. So please think about this when you're thinking about opening any part of your indoor facility, that it does prove a greater risk than what it does outdoors. And that's all from me. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Jen. Okay, so we're just going to move on now to a bit of sharing of good practice. So I suspect over the last couple of weeks you've probably heard a lot from us with our advice and guidance and the documents and resource that we're producing. So we thought it'd be a good idea to invite a safety coordinator on tonight just to provide a bit of an update and their experiences within their club. So in a couple of minutes, I'm just going to invite Hamish Skeen on from Lismore RFC just to give us a bit of an update and background on what they've been doing at Lismore. Just before Hamish speaks, I just wanted to pick out a couple of examples of some good practice. There are loads of good practice that we're seeing around social media that we're hearing directly from clubs, but just a couple of snippets, I suppose, of what we're seeing that we kind of recognise as something that would be really good to do for clubs. And first of all, Joseph, I don't know if Joseph is on this webinar, but we picked this tweet out from Carrick Rugby Club, and it simply all it was doing was it is just announcing Joseph as a safety coordinator, having the email address as well, and having the COVID safety specific email address within there as well, and just announcing that social media for members to see. And we just think that's just a really good example. Again, it's something that's really quite simple to do, but what I suppose the impact of that, I think just probably provides that bit of reassurance to your members that, one, that you've appointed a safety coordinator and you're letting your members know who that person is, and then I think it just gives that bit of reassurance around that as well. And the other example that we've picked out, and again, this is two of many examples we've seen, is just an open letter that Hamilton Rugby Club wrote and popped on their website, which just explained a bit about how they are returning to rugby. Again, referencing who the safety coordinator is within the club, and having contact details within there. So, as I say, it's little things, but it's things that I think we would certainly recommend that all clubs do, and just whether it's through social media or it's an open letter or it's on your website, is just is contacting, communicating to your members who the safety coordinators are. So a little thing I just wanted to pick out. So just before I hand over to Hamish, who's just going to give us a bit of an update. So, as I said, Hamish is the safety coordinator for Lismore. Lismore had their first session today for youth, so I thought it'd be really good timing and opportunity to just bring Hamish on just to give us a bit of an overview of his experience. So, Hamish, I think your mic's unmuted. So over to you, if you can hear us.
Hello, yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thanks, Hamish.
Excellent. Okay, good evening, everyone. Yes, so we're our first session today. So we've been planning this for a couple of weeks now, and the first thing we did really was go out and communicate with the parents. We sent out a survey a couple of weeks ago just to get a feel of what the parents' feelings were about their kids coming back to training, and very much positive in they thought non-contact in phase 2 and sort of non-contact training phase 3, but we're always just waiting to see just what the Scottish Government's guidelines were and the SRU guidelines were regarding the contact aspect of the training for young people. So when that became clear, we knew what we could do and what the parents' feelings were, and that's when we started to put procedures in place for the risk assessment, pitch setup, drop-off areas. So we've set the pitches up very much as per the Scottish Rugby's guidelines. 5 metres in from the touch and the try line, 15 metre gap in the middle. We set up drop-off areas, 2 different areas for the different pitches, and we made available 3 training sessions, one on pitch 1, one on pitch 2, and a further one later on pitch 3. And we staggered the sessions, one starting on pitch 1 at 12 till 1 o'clock, session on pitch 2 from 1:30 till 12 to 1:30, and the third session from 2 o'clock till 3 o'clock. So it allowed for pick up and drop off to be staggered. Now, we have no indoor facilities available, or toilet or hand washing facilities at the moment, but it seemed to be quite important from the parents' point of view that there was some hand washing and sanitising facilities available. So we set up a hand washing station beside the pitch, hand wash and sanitise. And before we went down to pitch at the drop off, we also took their temperature. Again, belt and braces, but we wanted to do this to start with. So the parents felt confident that we were taking this seriously. We would ask them whether they'd done the NHS assessment, online assessment. If they hadn't, we went through the questions. Have you got a recent and persistent cough, a temperature, change in taste and smell? And if that was all good, they were then sent to the appropriate pitch, to the sanitising station. Just going back to how they would book in, we sent up an Eventbrite event for each session, which they could then go and register on and buy a ticket. And on arrival today, they were asked whether they would be coming to the follow-up session, which would be the same times on Thursday. If they're doing that, then what we do then is just make available tickets for additional places that are available on the sessions for Thursday's training. And so it went quite smoothly today. The check-ins takes about a minute to check in an individual, take their temperature, ask the questions, send them down to the pitch, but went quite smoothly. On the pitch, the coaches are not allowed on the pitch because it's the players' bubble. Although the coach was quite obvious wanting to step onto the pitch, but had to be encouraged not to, and would be two metres away from the side of the pitch. Training session consisted of a 10-minute warm-up, a 50-minute Hanley exercise, water break, and then maybe a 25-minute of the touch according to the modified rules, and a 5-minute warm down the end, and on leaving the pitch to wash your hands and sanitize your hands again, and then leave for pickup. So that was the process we had in place today, and it went quite smoothly.
Brilliant, Hamish, that's great. Thanks very much for that. Just a quick question for you, Hamish, if you don't mind. Just in terms of coaches or team leads, did you have team leads at the session today?
Yes, we had 3 team leads at the session today. So because we were intending 3 sessions with the numbers, we cut that to 2, and they were separate. So we had one 12 till 1, and then 2 until 3. So effectively, there was three leads per training session today. And what we did was we stationed them at either side of the pitch, and one at the end. So they were never actually on the pitch. In which having one either side helped with communication, particularly in doing the warm-ups and whatever.
Excellent, that's great. And how did you find the Eventbrite process for the registration and sort of the check-in?
That worked well, yes. The tickets were purchased, and we created a register from that. We also had all the contact details, emergency contact details on the register. And as they came in, we would ask them the questions, take their temperature, and ask them if they're coming to the next session. So they're ticked off as having purchased a ticket for the next session. So it's only going to be the available spaces other than the people are already booked in that are going up for the next session, which should make it easier to manage.
Yep, excellent. And I'm sure the players loved getting back out training again.
Oh, absolutely loved it, yes. Good stuff.
Okay, Miss, that's great. Thank you very much for that. Really much appreciated, and very informative as well. So I'm sure that was very useful for everybody who was listening in.
Thank you.
Okay, dokes. So just a couple more pieces from us. There's been a couple of questions about check-in, check-out process, and there are a number of different ways of doing this. And ultimately, it's up to you as coordinators with your clubs to get to create the sort of the most the easiest process for you and what works best for you. But we just wanted to just kind of share this Sports Trade Return to Rugby app, who've been in contact with Scottish Rugby. You'll see down the bottom right hand side there's a link to the website and an email address where you can find much more information. But this app, first of all, and maybe more importantly, is free to use, and it's a really simple app to manage check-in and check-out processes for your players and coaches. Plus, it has some other pieces of functionality which are really useful. So, for example, it has a symptom checker questionnaire which players and coaches can complete on a daily basis or when they come down to training. It allows you to schedule in training sessions, and again, similar to the Eventbrite functionality, it allows players to pre-book onto those scheduled sessions as well. And again, the functionality around that is really straightforward. The check-in and check-out process can happen, obviously, with smartphones, which most people have now. Can happen as people arrive at the training ground. And then I suppose from a safety coordinator role, from a club point of view, there's some nice handy reports that you can pull from this, for example, from a track and trace purpose. But you can also pull out reports nice and easily of who's attended training sessions, and for looking at the symptom questionnaire as well, just to provide that sort of further information if it's required. So kind of what we want to do is just to share this as another option. As Hamish has spoke about a couple of minutes ago, there is Eventbrite which can be used as well. Last week we also shared the Google Docs form, which is I suppose a slightly trimmed down and even simplified version for creating these check-in, check-out registers for player and coach attendance. But as I said, these slides will be sent out tomorrow. The link is on this slide, and I know Chris from Sports Train has intimated that effectively, if you want to get further information or look at this further, you can contact Chris directly, and he'll happily set you up, set your club up for this app, which might be a really useful, really simple tool to help with this process as we build on through the phases. So just a little piece of information there. Just before we move on to a bit more of a Q&A, if there's any more questions, just a couple of final messages from us. And it's just to reiterate, these were picked up on Friday at the webinar on Friday, but just to reiterate that we're in phase 3 of the Scottish Government route map, and it's just to emphasise that this might be in place for longer than the 3 weeks. So we just obviously encourage that patience as we go through and keep looking at the guidelines as we're releasing and producing them throughout this process. In terms of inquiries, there's been lots of really good questions that have been coming into the department, and we keep encouraging that. Keep sending in your questions if you have, because as I reiterated the last training webinar, we're here to do a lot of the legwork and hopefully take a lot of the pressure and stress off. So please do keep sending in your questions, and if you do have questions you want to send in, then if you could just send them to Rugby Development admin email address. And then that way it will just be dealt with quickly, and the emails will get signposted to the appropriate person. And then Neil's already touched on earlier on in the webinar about the new COVID e-learning course, which will hopefully be releasing later on this week or early next week. And again, a tool for your coaches, players, match officials to complete before they return to rugby. So that's it from us. As I said, we're very keen to listen to any more questions that you have. So I'll stop sharing my screen now. And Neil, I don't know if there's any hands being raised.
Not
questions.
Yeah, there's a couple here, Stephen. Just while I'm doing this, there's a question about guidance on cleaning of balls. So the guidance at the moment is really that soapy water will kill the bacteria, and that's from World Rugby. So doesn't need to be any chemicals used or anything on the ball. World Rugby guidance is that it just needs to be soapy water. However, we will look to circulate some additional guidance. I've made a note of that, as we do have some information we can circulate on that. So yeah, we have Douglas Smith. Doug, if you still want to talk, I'll just activate your mic, Doug.
Yeah, I'll be very quick. I've got 3 points. First of all, would it be possible for you to compile a weekly FAQs summarising all of the questions that you've had into their email inbox, please?
Doug, we actually do that at the moment. Doug, it goes up online on a regular basis, but certainly Steve can circulate that with this, at the end of this session to everyone. But we actually updated it this morning, so it is available.
Okay. With regards to the check-in, check-out app, would you recommend that members, stroke parents, actually download the app themselves, so as part of the checking in process that they actually come along, and as the app got that functionality to allow that to speed up the check-in process?
Yes, Douglas, exactly. So if the club do sign up to the app and create an account, then each individual player, coach or member would download the app themselves.
Okay.
Smartphone, so when they do arrive into the club, they can just simply go on the phone and click the check-in button.
Okay. And finally, with regards to the reopening of indoor catering facilities, obviously you mentioned risk assessments. Would there perhaps be an onus or local authority inspection or any scrutiny carried out by themselves to regards the health and safety put in place?
Or if the club is owned and managed, if Clubhouse is owned and managed by the club, it's absolutely the club's responsibility to do it. And
Right.
I wouldn't expect anyone to check and challenge it. Someone from local authority may want to see it, but there certainly wouldn't be anyone that'd be assessing it. That's just down to the club.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Douglas. That's great. We have Alistair. Alistair, I'll just activate your mic. Alistair, if you still like to ask a question, your mic's on. Alistair.
Yeah, hi. It was just a quick question, really. I know you may have touched on it slightly earlier. Oh, sorry, my printer's now just started. About mouth guards in minis, particularly. I know touch rugby is not particularly relevant, but obviously it's key going forward, I guess, and a high risk area.
Yeah, I actually spoke with Dr. James Robson about this yesterday, and at the moment, there isn't any formal guidance from World Rugby on this. Like a lot of things at the moment, we are having to react pretty quickly to things. So from a mouth guards perspective, Dr. James's view was that ultimately it's a recommendation for people to wear mouth guards anyway. It's not a compulsory thing, and if players do want to use them, because people use them for various different means, so we would still they're still permitted to be worn. We just encourage obviously very, very strong hand hygiene and try where possible. And again, this is where possible with kids to not keep on repeatedly taking them in and out. But with knowing how hard that is with kids, a bit of a challenge. But yeah, they can still be worn, but just with a bit of a caveat of trying to limit the amount of times that they're taken in and out, and obviously thorough cleaning as usual, as you'd hope, before and after every session.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Alistair. We have Mark Griffin. Mark, I'll just put your mic on. Hi, Mark. Mark, I think I've got your mic on. I think your mic might be muted, Mark, if you're there. Oh, there you are.
Hiya, is that okay?
Yeah. Hi, Mark.
Perfect. Hiya. Yeah, thank you again for another really informative session. I've got two questions. One is in regards to guidance for pitchside first aid. I can't think I've seen anything specific in regards to that. We do have at Glenmasters Rugby Club, we've got a nurse who's working as a bit of a consultant with us as far as a sub-COVID group that we've put together. However, if you have anything from a Scottish Rugby perspective or World Rugby, that would be really appreciated.
Yeah, happy to take this one. I know Jen and I had a conversation about this because there was some CPR updated guidance circulated recently, which is on the Sports Scotland website. From a first aid perspective, again, conversation with Dr. James Robson. He's actually on a group with World Rugby at the moment, who are looking at publishing guidance on pitchside first aid, and that includes the training course, the first aid in Rugby Level 1, which is at the moment is a practical course, which is going to be challenging to run. So they're actually looking at whether that could become an online course in the interim period. So yeah, watch this space on that information. I think at the moment, it's the current guidelines from a physio perspective. I know physios have been receiving updates from the Chartered Institute of Physiotherapy, so that, they can get guidance from that perspective. But that, almost information to come from us on that, Mark.
Perfect. The second point is just in regards to a question that I submitted as far as lead training. I don't know if that's incorporated within the online sort of e-learning, or if there's going to be something, because we're holding a call with all our leads tomorrow night to bring them up to speed and hopefully just get some feedback from them how they want to learn as far as moving forwards is concerned.
Steve, I don't know if
in terms of the team leads, Mark, so yes, certainly if the team leads will most likely be the coaches, and therefore the e-learning course will be relevant for the team leads. I think there's no specific training plan for team leads at the moment. A lot of the information that we are sharing tonight and in our other webinars that we did, for example, on Friday, I would certainly encourage them to attend the Friday sort of phased update webinars. Then again, all this information that we've gone through tonight, almost all of it is available on the website. So what I would encourage you to do, Mark, maybe is just share the slides and share the webinar recordings with your team leads, but then also direct them to the website where all this information and resources available.
Perfect. And a number of those things are already in hand, but I just wanted to understand if there was anything specific. But no, that's brilliant. Thank you very much, guys.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Mark. That's great, and I think that's us, Steve. So
okay,
yeah, that's just checking. Yep, that's everyone.
Okay, well, great. Well, thanks for those that asked questions. Thank you very much. There's still some questions coming through the typed Q&A. So again, we will look at them and add them to the FAQs document that we keep updated. So yeah, that's all from us. Thank you very much again for tuning in, and thank you for your continued efforts to supporting the safe return to rugby at your clubs and schools. And we'll look forward to catch up with you soon. Thank you.